subcommittee will come to order. Before we get into this, I just want to say we did our second field hearing. The first field hearing for the entire committee was done in Ranking Member Levin's district. He represents Camp Pendleton, and I thought that was fantastic. And I want to thank you personally and professionally for coming to Wisconsin. And we did another field hearing on TAP, and I think it was very, very successful. And you really showed yourself to be a dedicated legislator and a consummate professional, sir. Thank you. So thank you. I guess that was is that a point of personal privilege? I don't know. There's some language for that, but I really mean that. It was awesome. You did great. And Ms. Ramirez, I apologize for being tardy. I want to thank everybody for being here today to discuss how we can ensure that our transitioning service members are receiving the mental health support they may need before, during, and after transition. And as always, I appreciate the nonpartisan nature of this subcommittee. We got a little squirrely this morning, honest to goodness, and we don't need that here, the politics. Myself, I'm guilty of it also, Ms. Ramirez, so if I said something to offend you earlier, I apologize publicly and privately, if you'd like also. You're also a professional, ma'am. So we're just not going to do that here. We're just not. It's no secret to anyone, as a former SEAL, fixing the TAP program for our transitioning service members is something I'm very passionate about. I've had over 21 of my friends, actually 21, commit suicide. Navy SEALs that you never heard about. And, one is too many, 21 is very troubling. We've made improvements in the transition assistance program. One of my top priorities during the Congress, and have advanced numerous bills in that direction. I know change doesn't happen overnight, but for some of our veterans, if change is not implemented soon, it will be too late. The scourge of suicide takes an average of 17 veterans' lives a day, and I believe that number is not accurate. I believe it's much higher because the way the Veterans Administration actually records suicide, so I believe it's much more than that. Data shows that in recent years, many of our veterans who died by suicide had transitioned from the military no less than 2 years prior to the death. The year before transitioning service members are discharged and 2 years after are the most dangerous time for a new veteran, especially those who are younger and are trying to navigate the civilian world. The issue is that in a millisecond, you lose your uniform, your rank, your authority, anywhere from half to your entire paycheck. And the joke with my wife and several other military spouses is twice the husband, half the paycheck. That's real. How many spouses do we have here? In 2020, the suicide rate for veterans who had transitioned from the military just 1 year prior was twice as high as the national average, and that statistic keeps me up at night, and it should keep everybody up at night, especially people sitting on this panel. These veterans are not just numbers. They are my friends. They are the people that have ensured that we have the ability to conduct this hearing in peace. We just simply have to make sure that we do better, and we can. There's got to be some actual accountability in these programs for the failures that have been identified. These agencies cannot simply check a box and call these programs a success. One life lost, again, is too many. The Government Accountability Office has identified numerous ways that we're failing to connect our service member with mental health services. The warm handover process is not happening as it should. Who in the federal government or personnel on these bases is accountable, and what can we do to change it? This isn't just a big hand little map issue. We identify people and hold them accountable. We got to start doing that. The In-Transition program, which is supposed to ensure service members with identified mental health issues are connected with the mental health provider after transition, is not connecting with service members about 70% of the time. According to the Government Accountability Office, In-Transition has a successful contact rate of 2%. So who in the DOD is accountable for calling these programs a success and coming back here and getting money every year? It's 2%. It's absurd. I'm very frustrated by DOD's failure to respond to the GAO's recommendations immediately. And to my knowledge, DOD only did so after I sent a letter to them asking about these recommendations for their plan to improve this program to reach actual service members. And I believe I'll be reading the response that I got back because it makes absolutely no sense at all. I don't want to hear platitudes any longer. I don't want to hear any excuses today. I want to hear concrete ideas for how we're going to reach the goal, and that is to get in contact with as many veterans and vulnerable veterans as possible. With that, I'd like to yield to Ranking Member Levin for his opening remarks. The gentleman yields back. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes. Ms. Cohen, you said you contacted 14,000 veterans? Is that right? 14,200 something, your testimony?
Thank you for that. Let me just.
So I believe page 2 out of 11 of your written testimony. The answer is yes. So,
Yes.
okay, so you've contacted 14,000 out of how many?
Thank you for that question, and that's specific to VHA, and I will turn that over to my colleague, Ms. DeBoard.
All right.
Thank you for that question, and thank you, Ms. Cohen. So you're speaking, Representative, to the VA Liaison for Healthcare program?
Yes.
Yes. In my humble opinion, a best practice for transitioning veteran service members
100% you're not answering the question I asked. I said you contacted 14,000 according to Ms. Cohen's testimony. Out of how many?
Out of
The answer is
200,000 that would
That's
have been.
0.07%. Okay, where I come from, that's failure. I certainly would not come up here in front of this committee and tout that as a good number. That's horrible. It's 0.07%. Ms. Ortega, I wrote a letter, it's really detailed, fancy words and stuff, about the GAO report, a whole bunch of things, and I asked this series of questions. There's 9 of them, very detailed. How does the Department of Defense plan to revise transition assistance criteria? How does DOD plan to modify outreach? DOD to coordinate, blah, 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 all this stuff, like super detailed, right? Here's the response. And I will ask unanimous consent that these are both entered into the record without objection, so ordered. The department agrees with the recommendations provided by the GAO report and is currently assessing the feasibility and resources needed to implement the actions and procedures required to adequately address the GAO recommendations. Now, the only thing missing from this is some ranch dressing, because that is straight up word salad. This means nothing, okay? I don't know how many 40-pound brains it took to write that sentence, but it has nothing to do with these very detailed and specific questions that were asked that pertained to one of the most important things we can possibly do, which is transition someone from a productive member of the uniformed services to a productive member of the civilian community. This is wholly unacceptable. And when Mr. McGarvey is asking you a question, you blew him off too. The Navy is not a person. It's not. So when you say, I'm gonna take it back, to who? So I was a command career counselor for 2 different commands. And I told everybody, if you're gonna get out of the service, you don't talk to anybody but me. And I set them up for success as a civilian in a very open way and did everything. And I had a 100% retention rate because I truthfully looked at these servicemen and women and said, you wanna stay, that's great. You don't, that's great too, let's help you out. So the Department of Defense, writ large, is failing our service members, and you know it. You absolutely know it. You said that this is your testimony. You're not responsible for the TAP program, but you're responsible for the policies that inform the Transition Assistance Program. That doesn't mean anything. It literally means nothing. So these people, you got 7 bosses. So doctrinally, you should have, what, 6 to 9 direct reports talking to you. You shouldn't have 7 people telling you what to do. And this is just wholly unacceptable. So the culture of the Department of Defense is such, from my direct observation. The DOD recruiting is horrible now, worse since the Vietnam War. And they think if they give our service members a smooth transition to the civilian world, it's going to increase people getting out of the service. That's been proven wrong by naval special warfare. So we have got to do something, And it sure as heck is not this, ma'am. So I'm going to print this for you, and I'd like you to take this, get me answers back, and then I want the names of every single person you're going to bring this to in every one of the uniformed services. And I'd like that by the end of the month. Now, my time has expired, and out of respect for my colleagues, I know that Mr. Levin has got some more questions. We will do a second round of questioning. So I will yield back, and I recognize Ranking Member Levin for 5 minutes. This is your mission, ma'am, from Mr. McGarvey. You're going to come back here, and you're going to tell us by department, by name, who is responsible for these specifically. And the series of things that my colleague from the other side of the aisle has asked you will be reported on, and that will happen by the end of the month, or I will personally hold you accountable, because now I have a name. And I think it should be telling to everybody here on this panel and the people behind you that when we all agree there is no daylight between the Republicans and the Democrats on this committee, zero. And we have to do better. And this, we're going to work harder, we're going to double efforts, no, it's garbage, unacceptable. So that's your first mission. The second one is I want answers in the English language for these 9 questions that I do not need to put a condiment on, okay? No more word salad, not doing it. Because our veterans are killing themselves because they have 7 bosses. On that note, today is World Suicide Prevention Day. So if anybody's having any issues, I need you to dial 988 and then press 1. So I am unwilling to have another one of my friends or colleagues or someone that has protected our nation kill themselves because of word salad. It ain't happening. I want to thank everybody for attending today, and I appreciate the discussion. And this is not over. We just have to do better, and we can. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, and I don't want to go there, okay? So with that, I yield to my friend and colleague, Ranking Member Levin, for any closing statements. Gentleman yields back. Thank you again, everyone, for coming here today. And ma'am, Ms. Ortega, no kidding. I really appreciate you showing up. And by the way, this is the best committee hearing Mr. Rodriguez has ever had. Right? Dude's like, I'm out of here. Woo! I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous materials without objection. So ordered. The hearing is adjourned.